Hello, everyone. Rashad Robinson, civil rights leader, strategist, organizer. I'm here for a conversation that I really want to bring you all in on around what's happening in Minneapolis. We've all been watching on the ground as ICE invaded and created so much havoc for communities, making it so that people couldn't even plan their day and engagement. The police violence, the racism, the ways in which community, though, in Minneapolis banded together and pushed back and stood together. There's so many dynamics behind this, and in particular, so many dynamics as it relates to what this means for Black folks and Black communities, both Black Americans who were born here and Black immigrants, and the relationship between all of us. I am so excited to just be in conversation today with Imam Makram El-Amin. Imam has served as a progressive religious leader and a pillar of the Minneapolis community. He has counseled Minneapolis Attorney General Keith Ellison, since he became the first Muslim elected to Congress. He has served as a chaplain of the Minneapolis Police Department, and he currently serves as the board chair of the Urban League Twin Cities. Thank you for being with us, Imam.
Thank you so much, Rashad. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
So, my work in civil rights, you're always kind of facing these really dynamic tensions that you want to make real for people. So people understand sort of what's happening, and then they understand how they can take action. Can you just start off and just help us sort of understand what's currently happening on the ground? We saw so many images of what was happening on the ground. We saw the arrest of journalists. We saw the attacks on the communities. We saw the killing of white protesters. Tell us what's happening now since the Trump announcement that they were changing strategy.
Yeah. So, for a little bit of context, we had, over 3,000 ICE agents on the ground here in the state of Minnesota. And just to put that in a little bit of perspective, there's just over 600 police officers for the Minneapolis Police Department. So this was, 4 to 5 times the number of officers that are on the ground here. And in many cases, they were outnumbered in many respects, which could happen, except that that dynamic that also was present was that there was no cooperation between these two entities that really wreaked havoc and brought chaos in many situations where protests, vigils, and other things were taking place. We saw I'm not sure how it looked from the outside looking in, but being on the ground here, it was a constant consciousness of the presence of ICE, through our streets, in the neighborhood, in the community, in the hood, basically where we are, up and down, the major thoroughfares and also back streets, residential areas, and so on. What we experienced was, folks that were being basically harassed and targeted, where folks who were not trained as peace officers and this and that. These were border patrol type scenario. So it's two different kinds of it's a world of difference in terms of how you engage with people. I would say stopping, harassing, pulling people out of their cars, breaking windows, crashing into vehicles. It was a lot of things. Now we saw the murder of Renee Good, and we saw Alex Pretty. We saw those things happen, yeah. But there were a slew of things that just short of death, right? All kinds of assaults, all kinds of harassments, folks that was running up in people's homes and places of business without any warrants at all. It was just lawlessness. And on top of that, these folks were masked, so it was hard to see what was going on. And to add a little caveat to that too, then there was a little bit of copycat kinds of things. We had reports of people who were not a part of ICE that were dressing in this way too. So now you got people who are just showing up in a certain way and trying to impose their will, but they had nothing to do with that. So it was chaotic. It was essentially chaotic. Lots of folks were, fearful. lots of anxiety. Folks were not going to work, not going to school, and it really hurt, particularly in our immigrant communities, Black immigrant communities as well. We have a large Somali, East African population, as well as West African population. A lot of their businesses and things like that suffered. Folks were not patronizing them due to fear of what would happen. And most of these things were happening to citizens. These folks were citizens, or they had a legal right to be in the country. These were not folks who were the illegals, that kind of thing, where there was paintings with such a broad brush, and not making distinctions in that way. I think that was extremely harmful to a lot of folks as well too. So lots going on now. Fast forward to where we are right now, and the decline, or the drawdown. I think they're calling it, of ICE agents. I think I have noticed, less of a presence over the last, week or two. I have noticed that, noticeably. I mean, because they were just present, they were ever present, and so we have seen a noticeable, I would say, drawdown, if you will. However, those who are still on the ground, their tactics still have not changed, right? So the idea, they're still very aggressive, still violating folks, and taking people, detaining them. You just mentioned some of our journalists, Georgia Fort and others, Don Lemon, and other local journalists who were jailed and arrested in their homes, just for reporting what was going on, just showing what journalists is supposed to do, what journalism is supposed to be about, informing the people about what's really happening, and so on. So we see all of this from an authoritarian perspective of, this is just kind of par for the course in their playbook of what they were doing. But Black folks is affected. Black folks are affected. My son was pulled over by ICE. Thank God it didn't escalate itself. And and then others around us. I lead a Muslim congregation here, very diverse congregation. Many of our members were harassed. Some of our folks were detained. Some even arrested as well. So, I mean, this touched home in so many different ways and spaces, for sure.
Yeah. Here at News One, I write a lot about power and the role of community to fight back, how we hold those in power accountable, how we use our resources and our engagement to to push back in ways, and also fight for the things that we want. I'm interested in sort of what you see as the path forward. There has been a drawdown, but as you're saying right now, there's still harassment, there's still engagement. And for people who are watching who don't live in Minneapolis, who live in other cities around the
Mhm.
country where this could be coming to their city, how what are the things that happened in Minneapolis that we can learn from?
I think Minneapolis had a bit the benefit of muscle memory, a bit, right? So, we are 6 years beyond George Floyd's murder here, where that sparked a global wide protests against police violence, state sanctioned violence, and the like. And coalitions and things have been built, and I think they were in many ways revived as well as emboldened in these moments. So you saw folks across all areas of difference. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was race, religion, socioeconomic status, gender, everything, right? So the idea of folks were coming together and understood that in this moment we're better together. We're better together, and we saw a lot of resistance. We saw a lot of folks that were, supporting each other through mutual aid and other things. And we saw attorneys stepping forth to help people with legal issues and the whole bit, right? So folks were really leaning in and building that coalition, and just talking about, young folks understanding what this moment really means and what they can contribute as well to the moment. And call for these things called third spaces, the mosques, the community centers,
Yeah.
Somebody's living room, somebody's basement, a space where folks can just gather together across lines, across difference, and really begin to talk and communicate and coalesce together in a way to say we're stronger and better together.
Love this idea of these third spaces, these places where we come together and we build culture and we build community. A lot of my work has centered on the role of Black joy as
Yes.
a vehicle to help us. Black joy is not the absence of pain and struggle, but it is also the presence of all the things that we want and build together. If we're only coming together in crisis, we sometimes don't get to imagine a better future. And I want you to talk a little bit about those dynamic tensions that sort of exist on the ground, in building coalitions. I don't want us to hide the ball on the fact
Yeah.
that
No,
we
no, no. Yeah,
sometimes have tensions between Black immigrant communities
we do.
and Black American communities. We sometimes have tensions between non-Black immigrant communities and Black communities. We have tensions all around, and in moments like this, it can sometimes bring us together around a common enemy, but it also makes it so that we have to then figure out, maybe when that common enemy is no longer there in the same way, we have to figure out, how do we build together, how do we share power, how do we find collective progress. So talk a little bit about those tensions on the ground for us that are existing everywhere around the country.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is a reality. You're spot on with this, Rashad. I mean, with the idea of tensions being on the ground. I think one of the things that I've said to my congregation and everyone who I could, reach, I says, when you have an existential threat, as we do right now in this regime, we have this authoritarian, regime. I hesitate to call it government, but it is what it
Yeah.
is. Um, One of the things that it shows you right away is all of the work that you have not done. It shows you all of the
Mm.
things that are not in place, right? I mean, it's when the pressure is applied, all of the gaps, all of the things begin to show itself. And we're no different here in Minnesota. I mean, obviously, there are lots of things, tensions between African Americans and East Africans, West Africans, and others. I think that it's a truth. It's a true thing that's taking place. It's something that we have to deal with in real time, quite frankly. You know what I mean? So we're trying to reach across lines, kind of work with folks as well. But it's a challenge. And I think that, as an organizer, that things move at the speed of trust. You know what I mean? So the idea of us trying to build together, work, together, and everyone being able to see themselves in the narrative, right? I think that that's really part of the challenge. I mean, Mayor Baraka was talking about, the No Kings rallies, you know what I mean, and how he's been to many of them and so on, but they don't look like us, and primarily in those rallies as well. Not that we don't support the overall theme of it, but it's like, where are we in this space, right? How are we to negotiate the space? It's mainly, white folks in these places and whatnot, but if we think about what they're pushing back against, we're in support of that in general, right? But the idea of everyone needs to see their self-interest represented in these ways, but it's challenging in the sense that the work hasn't been done, but it's also necessary in the sense that there's an existential threat that will divide us and take us apart piece by piece until there's nothing less, and then it's us, right? I mean, we all understand this idea that historically what they've done is created moments where they drew lines. They made
Yeah.
they made lines to be drawn, and they made these artificial lines that become hard lines. And these hard lines, are tension points for various groups and communities. While the infighting ensues, their plan itself basically propels it escalates, right? So we have to understand this from a historical perspective. This is not a new thing. This is not a new thing. And I think that when I think about African Americans, Black folks in this country, we've been through it all. We've seen it all. We've experienced it all. And we still are standing. We're still standing here too, right? So I think that we need to exercise some of our recall, some of our memory, right? And pull those things forward. And our Black immigrant brothers and sisters too, they need to be open to hearing about the experiences that we've had, right? And being able to connect with us. And I think that we're starting to see that in some small pockets and other things. And some of it's out of desperation. I'm not going to be sugarcoat it. Some of
Yeah.
it, it's just such a dire moment that people are like, look, we'll deal with this later. You know what I mean? Let's give this. But in order for this to be long standing, in order for it to be sustained, people have to build deeper relationships with each other. And that's really what this work is about. That's really what the work that we're trying to do, and trying to bring about, in this moment. At the same time, protect ourselves, protect our communities, protect the vulnerable, in our community.
So, want to last question and really want to, give you a chance to also just, maybe share any story as
Yeah,
well that I think is, that's been compelling to you in this moment. But, I think about, as this drawdown happens,
yeah,
as this change in strategy happens, the Trump administration will need more support from all sorts of people to execute. It's one thing to do brute force and
yeah,
to go in but it's another way to do things that look more surgical. You need warehouses in a new way. You need cooperation from more people, and part of needing that type of cooperation creates an opening for
yeah.
us in
Yes, it
our
does.
alliances, calling on people to not comply, to
Yes.
not engage. And so I'm interested, as you think about what the strategy looks like moving forward, in Minneapolis. And you also think about where the gaps are, right? When there are tensions in coalitions, that creates moments for people to use everything from the mis and disinformation on social media to using the sort of the ways in which communities are oftentimes fighting for place and space and economic viability. All of those things exist, but
Yes.
underneath it, there's like human stories
Yes, it
of
is.
people working together. I think about that image of the young Somali man challenging ICE and the ICE leader. I think about the stories of Renee Good and Alex Preddy and their families. I think about all the stories from people I knew and got to know during the George Floyd uprisings,
Yeah.
who are engaging and leading in new ways. So, can you just share for us how you see the strategy moving forward, how you think about the openings, and how you hope that people who are watching think about what's happening in Minneapolis, but also think about how this relates to their own city and our country?
Yeah. I think, I don't think it's necessarily a new strategy. I think it's really, a modification, and a broadening of strategies that we know that have worked before as well. We talk about this coalition building and whatnot, but I mean, I think about, I think about, the we just prepared, several hundred food boxes to go out to,
Hmm.
low income and immigrant families and whatnot too, and just the collection of people who came together, black folks, white folks, Latino, East African, who came together not only to receive these things but also to pack the boxes and to help us get these things out and help us to be in communication with other folks in different spaces. I think that what we're seeing in these moments are opportunities of people coming together. I have people on my staff, and one of our social workers in our organization. She's a Somali American, and her brother was taken, and they didn't know where he was for 4 or 5 days. And here we were, as an organization, as a faith community, wrapping our arms around her, praying for her, helping her in her moment. Thank God he was finally released and came home. But the idea, we got folks, this is touching us in many different ways. I got grandsons essentially who my children, who are afraid for them to go to school, right? So now we're having to come together and deal with things about like childcare and all kinds of things that happen. So it makes you have to really see the whole world differently, and how we began to pull together, particularly around just basic needs and livable things like, what's my quality of life on a day-to-day basis. These are the kinds of things that I think that folks don't misunderstand, underestimate. I would say underestimate the impact of something like ICE. So whether the drawdown happens or whatever this is going on, I'm still, it's a little jaded as I'm thinking about this. But take it at face value. the impact of what has happened will last far beyond, these last, couple of months of them really being on the ground and really being intentional and being mean and nasty and aggressive toward people. And you had police that essentially were rendered irrelevant. They were rendered irrelevant. I mean, it was kind of in a gray area. Like, are you supporting the people? Are you supporting? It still was a lot of tension around these kinds of things, right? So, one last story I would say, man, we were at a protest, and I was out there, and I had a moment where I felt, I'm definitely my parents at this point. You know what I mean? And I have my son. Who was ready to go? They're my son. They're ready to go and get. We got to be out. We got to do this thing, in the whole bit. And I remember, and I had a thought. I had a thought that, man, I don't want my children harmed. I don't want my children harmed. And I remember, accounts back in the civil rights movement where the young people were gung ho, and some of our elders was trying to hold us back and keep us, safe in the whole bit. And I see, just the transformative part of that. When these things happen, we all have these interests, these entry points where we're resisting, yet we want our community safe. We want our families and things safe, right? So I think that ultimately, I couldn't keep them from going. So I joined them. I joined them.
Mm.
I couldn't keep them from, I couldn't keep them, close. It's like, listen, we got to go out. We got to be out with the people and so on. And I agreed with that. I agreed with that. But again, in our mind, I just appreciate the cautiousness of the elders, of helping us to keep making sense of things, but also the vigor and the strength and the will of our young people working together. And I think that in a small moment, we kind of fused that as a family. We fused those things together, and it allowed for us to participate and to engage and to be meaningful in a moment that really give my children the experience that many of us have had over the course of years. We've battled, protested, did all kinds of things over the course of time, but this is the first of major things in their lifetime. You know what I mean? To see something like this, federal
Yeah.
agents on the ground and these kinds of things. What I guess my overall point is that underneath all of these things, it is in a plethora of human stories. It is that it is
Yes.
of African Americans, of Black immigrants, of the Latino community. We have a mixed and diverse community all around us here in Minneapolis where we are. So we see folks every day across the street. Our Latino family right there across, huge family right across the street that we haven't seen. It's like they went into hiding. You know what I mean? It's like where are these people who are so vibrant and makes and contribute so much to our community? They are have disappeared essentially, right, because of fear, right? So we're seeing this on the ground. We're seeing these things happen, but I am still hopeful, Rashad. I am very hopeful. I'm
Hmm.
optimistic that we can still get in this moment. Now we have to do enough of the right things consistently, sustained over
Yeah.
time. We have to do that, but I am still hopeful and optimistic that we can meet this moment with the vigor that's needed, with the resistance that's needed. You mentioned joy, man. Joy and rest is part of resistance too.
Mm, it is.
Picking our moments in these times to make sure we're replenishing ourselves so we can be good to ourselves and therefore good to others. So I think all of these things are really coming to a head. But I do think that this makes us on the cusp of something. I feel like we're on a breakthrough of something. Not fully sure what that is, but I'm feeling the tension really in my body. I feel the tension of
Yes.
it every day of something that is to come that requires us to be present. And no one, I believe, should be on the sideline, especially folks like us who
Yep.
understand the the good, the bad, and the ugly of this thing, this experiment we know as America. We understand these things, and I
Hmm.
fully think that this is a call for us to come forward. Not to
Hmm.
back away from this moment, not to say it's a them problem, not a us problem. That's their thing. Yes, there's discrepancies. Yes, there's issues, but the bigger issue is about humanity in this moment.
Hmm. Well, we're going to all look back at this moment 5, 10, 15 years from now. We're going to have a story about what we did and how
That's
we
right.
engaged and how we built. And I thank you for sharing the story that that will be part of this moment. We have to meet this moment with motivation and engagement. We have to
Yes.
build power. We have to do the things necessary to not just fight back, but to fight forward so that we have
Yes.
enough power, whether it's in elections, whether it's over corporations, whether it's over the enablers, all
Yes.
of the forces that are standing in our way. And I just want to thank you so much. So much of our work and so much of our progress has been powered by faith leaders and faith communities, and you sit boldly in that tradition. And thank you for sharing with us a little bit about what's happening, about what needs to happen, and what we can learn and do together. Um,
Yes. Yes.
please, please stay in touch with us.
We
Keep
will.
us informed about what you're doing and
Yes.
how we can all sort of engage and be part of this. And peace and love to you and
Thank
to
you.
your family
Thank you.
as you all show us the way.
Thank you so much. Many blessings to you, and thank you for having me today. Thank you so much.